Welcome back, folks. It's been a minute, but we're happy to have you back, and we're happy to be recording another episode of CIOs and Bowties as we go around the world trying to sum up and us geniuses trying to figure out what actually is happening in this complicated soup of a market. So first of all, let's call it a good evening to you, David Crook.
Good afternoon, good evening, Greg, and good evening to our viewers. Absolute pleasure being back. I hope we can bring some content to you that at least gets you thinking, debating, and even disagreeing with us, perhaps.
Yeah, who knows? Okay, so let me introduce the themes. And you remember the way we get our themes is by monitoring what all people like of articles that we publish and put out there. And so the background behind me might give a little bit of a clue, and that would be downtown Tokyo, I believe, sometime late at night, where apparently it's just like daylight because of the neon lights. So the first theme is Japan. The exact article was published on Bloomberg, and it says foreign investors flock to Japan with Buffett's seal of approval. So we're going to be handling Japan in a second. The second article is surprise, surprise, over cryptocurrencies. And this one was on CNBC. And the title of the article was Paul Tudor Jones, the very famous hedge fund manager, says he likes Bitcoin even more now, rally still in the first innings. So quite clearly, we've got two investment choices. And I think the one obvious way they're connected together is that they're both the antithesis of the US dollar, right? They're non-American, non-US dollar investments. So Dave, why don't I hand it over to you? You decide which one we're going to discuss first, and let's dig in. Tell us a little bit about the article and dig in.
Indeed. Why don't we discuss Japan first? There will be a number of segments, folks, as we always do, so keep that in mind as well, so as not to overburden you with too much time spent watching Greg and I. With that being said, over decades, the Japanese economy and the Japanese stock exchange, the Nikkei 225, have lagged US performance. There's been a big change in terms of dollar perceptions in the last few months here. And during this discussion, if I refer to dollar strength or dollar weakness, I will refer to it against the basket DXY, the basket of 6 or so currencies, largely, overburdened by the euro, I beg your pardon, but the yen's in there, the pound's in there, the Swiss franc's in there, the Aussie dollar. But with that being said, we've seen the dollar index weaken substantially over the last 2.5 months. And there are many, I'm amongst them, I might add, that feel that dollar weakness is here for the time being. Number of reasons for that. Yes, there are other fiat currencies out there. The dollar is a fiat currency of note. But with that being said, we have created new money, so as to speak, to the tune of around $7.3 trillion in terms of the Federal Reserve Bank balance sheet this year. More to come. It seems like Congress are around the corner from issuing a new CARES Act 2. I don't know what they're going to call it, which is a combination of both the Federal Reserve Bank policy and our fiscal authorities, government, dishing out money as well, all in the light of COVID. With that being said, people are becoming skeptical as to fiat currencies and the like, particularly the way the US dollar is being used politically in many instances, helping with political issues, with sanctions, trying to put pressure on the SWIFT settlement system. There are many instances of where the power of the dollar in international trade. And as a reminder, as of the end of 2019, although the US GDP contributed only, largest contributor though, to global GDP, 20%, 1/5 of global GDP was the US economy, 70% of settlements of trade and services in the international economy were in US dollars. So the US dollar is shooting over its weight by miles in any event. So don't think that there isn't room for the US dollar to weaken over time. And there are many governments and individuals globally who are looking for that to happen. So with that being said, what does this weaker dollar do in terms of Japanese investing? I think perhaps, to Greg, people are looking to diversify the US holdings. The US markets have performed admirably over a long, long time now. And with that being said, there is a leaning towards international investing, somewhat driven by a lower dollar. And Japan has lagged over the years, over the decades, in fact. And perhaps this is the time when we will see some outperformance relative to other equity markets from the Nikkei 225.
Okay, a lot to digest over there. So let's the articles. Well, specifically Warren Buffett. He made a pretty big foray recently into Japan. He disclosed stakes in 5 venerable trading firms, all of whom were trading at discounts to valuation. So, it's no secret Warren Buffett is the quintessential value guy, although I believe he's actually changed that a little bit over the years. I think one of his biggest holdings is Apple, which is far from a value stock. But be that as it may, definitely value to be found in Japan. The Japanese stocks are trading at a little over 17 times forecast earnings compared with 22 times for the S&P. So definitely value to be found there as well. I'll note the Nikkei itself is up 13% year to date. And then maybe you just want to speak a little bit about the actual change in government that occurred in Japan.
Oh, indeed. So we have another elderly statesman due to medical ill health of the previous prime minister. So Yoshida Zuka has now become the prime minister in Japan, and he is one who is certainly loose in terms of his monetary controls. Mm-hmm. So we know that the Japanese central bank, like all the major central banks that come to mind, have been very loose in terms of their monetary policies. Japan are no different. So the Bank of Japan is no different to that. Plus, we have a prime minister and a government that are looking to help the economy along and aren't concerned about inflation. Clearly, Japan hasn't had an inflationary issue for decades now, and why should that change anytime soon? So that's not a major issue for them. But they certainly are very keen to get the Japanese and keep the Japanese economy going. Japan, I might add, Greg, should benefit from being in Asia. It is my view that given the performance of China vis-a-vis the rest of the world, economic performance of China, and you all know I'm not a very big fan of the Chinese Communist Party, the way they treat their people and the way they play in international markets. But that aside, their economy, it would seem, has accelerated brilliantly post-COVID, more so than anybody else. Who are the immediate beneficiaries of that? Is their neighbors. It's the Asian countries, and amongst them, although they're not best of friends, is Japan, whose export numbers are fantastic, by the way, their last export numbers. So another reason perhaps to see the Japanese equity markets perform well over the months and perhaps years to come.
Okay, very good. I've got a few things to add on the Japan story, a little bit on the macro side. Why don't we take a quick break? When we come back, we'll try and deal with a bit more of a meaty subject. So is Japan, here's the question to leave the listeners with, is Japan now emerging from its long deflationary spiral? And is it a model that the rest of the world can look to as we also look to exit, a deflationary spiral? So hang with us and we'll be right back.